Firstly, I would like to thank you to the organizing committee for their valuable efforts to perform this meeting, especially Gabriel Gihon for his kind invitation. So you're all distinguished podiatrists and physiotherapists. I think several of them are in you. So I feel privileged to talk in this online meeting. Thank you very much. So it's a 20-slide presentation. I won't take much of your time. In fact, I'm here to ask for your opinion and ask you questions instead of dictating something or summarizing huge network and huge research results. So I would like to begin with the Insoles job under the feet. They have roughly two mechanisms of effect, the mechanical and the physiological one. And also, there are two components that deliver this effect. The design and the material delivers that effect to the sole of the feet. So the mechanical effect changes how the foot interacts with the ground, either by altering plantar pressure distribution, which changes center of pressure behavior that is measured by the mechanoreceptors and delivered to the central nervous system. So from point of my view, there is a result that is I call altered motor response, and everybody calls it altered motor response, not me just. So the effect goes on whether the insole is, there's a huge debate, the insole should be custom prefabricated or something else, but the effect goes on whether the insole is custom prefabricated, semi-fabricated, or prescribed custom design condition. So the brain does not care if the insole is one of these, so it alters motor response. So they do all alter joint positions, static and dynamic way, and pressure distribution. So meanwhile, they also cause a shift in the sensory paradigm of the plantar sole due to alterations in mechanosensation, which makes an insole also a neural stimulator. Combining the mechanical and neural stimulators, which means they add up to form a neuromechanical stimulator to provide neuromechanical stimulation, which, like every stimulation, has a dosage and a response. So the dosage, I'm talking about the enhancing the neural component part, not the mechanical part, may be produced by textures and vibration. The dosage, the neural part, and its effects are mainly on the postural control mechanisms through mechanoreceptors, which is one of the main fields I work through. These mechanoreceptors are, as you all know, there are two types under the feet, Meister and Pacinian, Merkel and Ruffini endings, and their perceptions are vibration, fluttering, and the slow adapting ones, sustained indentation and stretching, which are all A-type fibers, which means they are very fast. Also, there are C-type fibers, but they conduct very slow, something like 1 meter per second. So now, if we talk about a little bit about vibration, the effects of vibration includes inducing specific and predictable postural reactions, which have been shown from late 1980s, beginning with the 1990s, and also they improve balance control by reducing postural sway. I'll come back to this reducing postural sway method later on, and modulates efferent autonomic responses during postural challenges, like changing the autonomic efferent pathways, changing the stiffness of the muscle due to sympathetic activation. So we have to have a look at the postural sway, and the body sways in a state of dynamic equilibrium, as we all know, and the center of pressure signal, in fact, is not a center of mass signal, but it is a very close signal to the 2D center of mass projection of 3D center of mass. However, the COP signal is much more faster than the COM in a higher frequency, regulating and keeping the center of mass under control in the support surface. Let's have a look at that. The heavy black line representing the center of mass is in a graph of displacement versus time. As you can see, center of pressure signal is also in phase with the center of mass signal, but it represents the answers of the central nervous system about over the moving center of mass or disturbed center of mass. So it's if you increase or if you disturb the center of mass anteriorly, then the center of pressure goes past it and then catches it up and then turns it back. So if you stimulate under the foot, let's say the metatarsal area or the toe region, the body may think that there is a pressure over there, so it reverses its action and goes posteriorly. So turning back to center of pressure, because of this graph, the center of pressure is an indirect measure of center of mass that we can use to measure balance, fall, wrist, function, status, etc. So back to insoles with vibration. Noise is created by vibration has two consequences which are very important for the vibrating insoles. The first one is stimulates mechanoreceptors. There, the signal, you use vibration to create the signal, and the signal is already over the threshold. So it directly stimulates the mechanoreceptors over threshold. And the mechanoreceptor deforms and sends a signal to the central nervous system, especially the sensorial area. The second one uses the stochastic resonance method, and it energizes subthreshold stimuli to reach the receptor threshold level. Here we can see the heavy black line with the original signal, which has two data packages over the threshold level, but another one here is below the threshold level of the mechanoreceptor. So you use subthreshold vibration. The patient does not think there is a vibrating thing under his soul. So the signals summate, and there is a new signal, a new data package for the central nervous system that is over threshold. So if this is an old patient, as we all know, when you get older, you lose the glabrous skin and consequently the mechanoreceptors, or maybe their effective threshold levels get higher. And so you lose data packages here, like this one. So if you use vibration or any other signal, it does not matter, and summate these signals using the stochastic resonance method, they summate and gets over threshold. This is one thing that we can do. So the textured insoles also work in the same way. They decrease postural sway during balance tasks in healthy older people, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and healthy young adults. Of course, there are some other research opposing these contributions. I don't think it's a surprise. I will talk about why. But there is a last meta-analysis conducted by Martin Alford. They report that in patients with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease, textured or other types of stimulating insoles have no effects on balance and gait parameters. Why? Maybe that is the point I would like to discuss about. There may be variability of the outcomes data. Since most of the outcomes data are considered clinically meaningful measures in the studies, consensus of measurement and definitions is needed. For example, you need to have a consensus of what to measure related to postural control parameters, which we don't have. You have to use valid and reliable measurement devices. In this point, I will simply remind a study conducted by Pickerel et al. In Journal of Athletic Training in 2011. In this study, they compared two postural stability evaluation devices, and one of which was not found so valid, but it's a very common device that is used in postural control studies, including insoles. So there is another generic problem, which is related to allocation, randomization, inclusion, and exclusion variations throughout the studies. But specific to insoles, this neurostimulating insoles, initial sensory threshold measurement is an important thing. So we have to measure the initial thresholds under the sole of maybe the control group and the study group. So maybe in the group, the study group, you have to achieve an homogeneity about the initial sensory threshold. So most of the studies dealing with these parameters does not include initial sensory threshold measurement. Of course, there is another generic problem with these studies. They are short-term studies, and we have insole factors and material. Let's say we're talking about implementing digital training in the education, especially let's begin with the CAD/CAM technologies, but the commercial one, the practice goes into 3D printing technologies. So we're not training people with the 3D printing technologies. It's very scarce, but the practice goes this way. So we have other factors you can use. In practice, they may use 3D printing technology combined with the textured technology. So we are a little bit behind this one. So another thing is geometry and vibratory threshold. Some of the studies and some of the researchers think that the vibratory threshold should be subconscious and does not, and it shouldn't stimulate the patient's soul superconsciously over the conscience. So there is no consensus about that. And of course, the texture characteristics related to texture insoles, some of them advocate that the spherical textures is not good for changing center of pressure movement, but the pyramid ones is okay. So we don't have any consensus yet. So another thing is difficulty of the postural task. Some researcher may ask the patient stand still on both feet, and some other may ask to close the eyes, and some other may ask to stand still, eyes closed on a single leg. So if you compare these three studies, you'll get wrong results. So it was not a surprise to have this meta-analysis eventually, because we don't have any consensus on many parameters. So this study does not mean that the textured or vibrating insole or stimulating insoles does not work or work. Because another thing I told you about, I will turn back to postural sway. Most of the studies say that it's reduces postural sway. For example, the textured insole, it's also true for the vibrating insoles. But I would like to ask you a question here. As you can see, the center of pressure frequency is high and it is already fast. So if you reduce the center of pressure variation, or if you reduce the center of pressure velocity, maybe you're disturbing the control of the center of mass by the central nervous system. Faster velocities of center of pressure may also mean that the central nervous system has a strict control over the center of mass, which moves very fast to catch up with the center of mass, and it's in perfect control. But if you say that reducing center of pressure is a good thing, I don't know if that is true. I think this is another point that we should discuss about. So we have to change the perspective of designing these insoles, and especially the research. We have to get a consensus about many things, but we may begin with a consensus on the primary outcomes, that is clinically meaningful measures and non-clinical measures, which are very hard to measure already. And even thanks for the help from Kevin Deschamps, I have to give him the credit here. he also advocates you should use the surrogate measures also. So another thing is that we have to use and have a consensus on the methodology and assessment and insole characteristics because, as I said, it's a neurostimulating device and it has a dosage, and these assessments and insole characteristics determine the dosage. So these 2 points may be the ones that we should start talking on, because otherwise we will get many research like this one and this one, these ones, Kenny et al., Hatton et al., who advocates that it works, and another one, and meta-analysis does not work. So we have to change our perspective. Thank you very much.